We begin with Elon Musk going up against some of the most powerful forces in the country. He is now taking on the Democrat establishment, its media enforcers, and Silicon Valley in his fight for free speech. So the White House is now warning that it's keeping a, quote, close eye on Twitter. Watch.
Are you concerned? Elon Musk says there's more and more subscribers coming online. Are you concerned about that? And what tools do you have? Who is it at the White House that is really keeping track of this?
So look, this is something that we're certainly keeping an eye on. Look, we have always been very clear and that when it comes to social media platforms, it is their responsibility to make sure that when it comes to misinformation, when it comes to the hate that we're seeing, that they take action, that they continue to take action. Again, we're all keeping a close eye on this.
Maybe that's because Musk says he will release Twitter free speech suppression files that include the platform censorship of the Hunter Biden laptop story. Tweeting, "The Twitter files on free speech suppression soon to be published on Twitter itself. The public deserves to know what really happened." Musk also says stakes are high for the country, tweeting, "This is a battle for the future of civilization. If free speech is lost, even in America, tyranny is all that lies ahead." Mr. Vice President, is Elon Musk right?
Well, I think Elon Musk is exactly right. I mean, the foundation of America is freedom, and the freedom of speech, a free and independent press is a bulwark of why this nation is extraordinary and exceptional. I just have to tell you, I mean, to see in the White House press room the suggestion that the President of the United States is keeping a close eye on any element of the media is deeply offensive to me. It's your job in the media to keep a close eye on elected officials. I lived in that world for 20 years as a congressman, as a governor, and as your vice president. But I do think, as you suggest, I think it may well be because Elon Musk, who I came to know very well during the 4 years of the Trump-Pence administration, I think it's because he is preparing to release information finally about the suppression of the Hunter Biden story, which, as I write about in my autobiography, So Help Me God, was a disgrace. The fact that a laptop was discovered in the weeks before the election, that emails were revealed, and that social media platforms, including Twitter, actually suppressed access to a New York Post story is deeply offensive to me. And Twitter wasn't the only one, but the fact that they're going to come out with this information, I have to believe some of the people walking around in the West Wing, it's one of the reasons why they're keeping a close eye.
That's right. And sir, what role then do you see the government playing in this, if any at all?
Well, I think it's important that we recognize, even in a free society, you're not free to yell fire in a crowded theater, right? And so there are basic elements, basic requirements of maintaining the debate. And Twitter is about that. They've reaffirmed their commitment to that. I have great confidence in that. But we ought to always err on the side of freedom and freedom of speech. I mean, for heaven's sakes, right now we're on the cusp of a heroic person named Jimmy Lai facing a trial in Hong Kong for standing for freedom of speech and freedom of the press. We ought to be sending a deafening message of support for that godly man in the stand that he's taken. And we ought to be pushing back on any rhetoric in the public debate here that would send any message other than we believe in freedom of speech and the freedom of the press.
That's right. And Martha, the vice president, brings up Hong Kong, territory of China. Critics argue that no more entity has been no furtherance of their censorship, a cog in the wheel, or even that actual proxy than Apple itself. And in that showcase showdown between Apple and Twitter, Elon Musk and Mr. Cook, to the tune of $40 million worth of ad revenue per year, where do you see that going?
Well, I think it's fascinating when you see what's happening right now in China and you see people standing up for freedom. And I just want to say about Elon Musk, and I think, Mr. Vice President, first of all, it's great to have you with us today. And thank you for your service to this country over all of the years that you have served. And, but Elon Musk is such a fascinating character in the history of this country. You look at what he's done with rockets to space, with electric vehicles. He's always pushing the envelope, and he likes failure. He likes it when things don't work because he talks about what you learn when you fail over and over again. If you've watched, there's a great documentary about SpaceX, which, just really shows how dedicated he is. So I don't think he's going away from this fight anytime soon. And I think you're right. I think it strikes fear in the hearts of a lot of people in Washington and in some of the media that he's going to allow light to be shown into this. And as far as the White House saying that they're keeping an eye on Twitter, this is a private company. I mean, sort of substitute other media organizations for the word Twitter in that conversation. We're keeping an eye on you, newspapers. We're keeping an eye on you, media organizations. And think about what kind of rightful chill that sends down people's spines in this country. So that's something we need to be very, very cautious of. But I do think that he's going to keep pressing, and I think it's good for the process. And, we had a lot of disinformation coming across Twitter when it came to COVID, when it comes to gender surgery, all of these things. And there is a check on Twitter. It's called the comments. Right?
Right, exactly.
When you post something, people weigh in and they say, no, that's not true. No, you're lying. That's not factual. That's the forum. That's the town hall that it's supposed to be. So I think the White House can just relax and allow that process to play out. And let's see what Elon Musk wants to be able to unleash in terms of this forum.
Right. That's such a great point, Ainsley, that the public square regulates itself. We're not China, where the government has to make sure that they're censoring and involved in every piece of conversation. So the free speech, the beauty of it is that your fellow Americans get to weigh in on your comments.
Yeah, and that's why Elon said he bought it. He wants that free forum, that public forum, the town square, when everyone can weigh in. And he's not a Republican. He did endorse DeSantis and wants him to run for president, but he also said he voted for Joe Biden. So, and in the past, he's voted for all Democrats until recently. So he bought this because he loves our country and he loves that we have free speech. And we're sitting on this sofa with the Vice President of the United States of America. Think about that. All of our backgrounds, where we came from. I'm from South Carolina, a little town, and I would go to Washington, D.C. and stand in front of the White House and take pictures with my family. And then the next thing you know, we have the opportunity to go in the Oval Office and interview the president and interview the vice president. And that is not lost on all of us. We have a great country, and this is a slippery slope. If we continue to not allow free speech, and we're seeing that happening little by little in our country, then we could end up like a China. We could end up like an Iran, where you don't have, you can't freely protest, or you get killed because you don't have your scarf on the right way. I mean, we're seeing this in other countries, so it's just scary. I don't know why everyone's so upset with Elon Musk and why they want him to not buy Twitter, and they're scared of what he's going to do. He just wants free speech. This is not a revolution.
Right.
Well, I got to Martha's point, if I may. I got to know Elon Musk well when I led the National Space Council.
Yes.
And we worked very closely with SpaceX. And I was very heartened when he got out his checkbook, $44 billion, and bought Twitter, because frankly, my impression of Twitter always was, although I served in the White House with somebody that used Twitter a fair amount.
We remember.
Every day. Look, we access the American people very regularly, but I always had a sense, and I worry about the suppression of conservative voices, the suppression of conservative views in social media, including on Twitter, not just the Hunter Biden story. Yeah. And I'm with you, Ainsley. I really do believe in what you said, Martha. I think Elon Musk's politics are different than mine. I mean, I know him well enough to know his politics are different than mine on many issues, but he has a bias for freedom, a bias for American innovation. I know he's going to bring that to Twitter.
Those are great biases to have. And Ainsley, I do think you bring up a great point about the slippery slope, and that's why this conversation really matters. The first red flag that I got was last year when Karine Jean-Pierre said that the Biden administration is working with social media companies to limit COVID-19 misinformation. So that is the government saying what is good and bad speech and talking directly to a social media company about it, which sounds an awful lot like a First Amendment violation. Then there was the Disinformation Governance Board that we thought was disbanded. Then because of the Intercept's fine reporting, we found out that DHS still plans to go after COVID misinformation, racial injustice, and information on the withdrawal from Afghanistan. Really? So you think about what the DHS was created after 9/11 to protect Americans from terrorists. How did it become an organization that is protecting Americans or trying to censor some sort of speech? That is a really big slippery slope. So all of this certainly matters, and it is going to be a very interesting fight. Elon Musk is a very unique guy, but he has a lot of powers against him, including apparently the government and Apple as well.
I can't wait to see what he reveals.
That's
I'm
right.
excited. Hopefully that'll come out soon.
Yes, that's right. Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.